Good evening, folks. How are we? Yeah, we bit of Radio 3 on for the nutrition of that good music. I don't know who, there aren't really many, Irish composers of note. There were guys in there was a guy in the 1900s apparently, I read about it, was the foremost classical pianist in Europe, you know. Some Guinness swilling, street fighting probably, you know what I mean? But I thought that was a good win, because outside of that, we don't really, you know what I mean? It's mostly Italians and stuff, and like the French and Germans and all that there. The English have a few, and later on the Americans, with all of that bit more modern type of thing and stuff. And then jazz, which is a bit of a kick in the face to the whole classical movement, you know what I mean? But one that I am perfectly happy to observe, because I dig jazz. So anyway, I was watching an interview with Simon Jordan. I just seen Simon Jordan interview, Liverpool was said. I was like, right, it'll be good to see him, under scrutiny, the other side of the lens and stuff like that. And do you know what I mean? Because he sort of plays that headmaster's role, doesn't he? And suddenly he's been brought in by the ombudsman. So it turned out it was these four guys out of Liverpool, the Smith brothers, like Beefy and Callum Smith and Paul Smith, and the other brother whose name I don't know, just haven't found it out yet, but I thought it was a really good, for like a podcast type of thing, it was a brilliant setup, right, a good concept, because Simon Jordan was sort of trying to portray himself as one of the boys, you know what I mean? It's like, forget it, I'm not a, millionaire and, a square old guy, with the glasses and everything else. He was like big time Charlie type of effect, but it was quite good actually. But I thought it was a good setup because you sort of had one principal interviewer, which I guess is his mate, Paul Smith from Top Sport and all that there, And I was just watching it, and I was sort of in my mind putting it on Simon Jordan. So, yeah, how do you like it? How do you like it? And in a playful manner, really. It's just sometimes you set up a bit of theatre in your mind, don't you? For just for the purposes of playful kind of banter. You know what I mean? Perhaps it might engender some original thought that you could contribute to a conversation later in the evening, Anyway, next thing, Callum Smith comes in and asks a question, and it was like, right, I didn't see that coming. And it was like, each of the fellas could just step in like that there. I was going, this is a damn good setup, So it come to mind earlier. I mean, that was like months ago, and for some reason I was thinking of Eubank, whenever Davey fought him, and I was thinking about that style of fighter, that compact, goes well to the body. And actually, I didn't know a great amount about him, but I knew that I enjoyed watching his style, the little that I'd seen of him. And I thought to myself, he fucking hell, didn't he? That's kind of funny. They've got a similar style. I kind of presumed without having seen the evidence. So after a bit of, hemming and hawing and all that there, I got the fight on and I watched it, and it was interesting, First round Canelo come out, and it seemed like he was doing whatever he wanted, carte blanche, right? And, rather than like Floyd Mayweather might open with like a jab to the body, something unexpected. It was a jab on top, backhand to the body, and then another jab. It was like, how are you even getting away with this? How are you so warmed up in the first 10 seconds of this round? You know what I mean? I was getting a little bit frustrated because you always want to support the You know what I mean? But it was an interesting fight. I'm not going into loads of details and bore people, you know. I can't do the whole Barry Jones thing every night, but there was at one point where Canelo seemed to be like taking a liberty and basically just snapped him a really super sharp, because it was the sharpest punch thrown in the fight, a very super sharp right hook, if you know what I mean. And it was just like, I thought to myself at that point, you know, the Liverpool sort of things coming out here, you know what I mean? So it's like, Canelo would have better behave, you know. Anyway, like, to cut a long story short, I watched Paul against Andre Ward, because I remembered that they had fought. Love Andre Ward, loved to watch him. Didn't particularly enjoy watching his punitive sort of administration against Paul Smith, who was, you know, in the first couple of rounds, by all appearances, just there to soak up punishment and give him a couple of rounds. I thought that was in poor taste. He seemed to change angles after a while, and Paul Smith come alive after 3 or 4 rounds and actually showed, oh, he has something to offer in this fight, you know. So something that I notice more and more, and when a British fighter, you know, probably unheralded really to the same level as these superstars, goes across the water to fight, they're overlooked quite a bit. So what do? You know, tactically, what's the smart thing to do? You play into that. Anyway, yeah, it was Callum Smith against George Groves. I was loving it because I'm a big George Groves fan, and I never got to watch the fight live at the time. Not sure how I missed that one. And yeah, like, again, I'll not get into things, but similar idea. Like, to be hesitant, you know, gloves out that way, you know, straight shots, and I was thinking to myself, oh, he's really clearing the lines for, you know, to come down the channels. You know, this is what I was sort of thinking, you know, and just at the last sort of dying seconds of the first round, he suddenly come alive from what seemed like, you know, someone who had yet to fully embrace manhood, you know. And like I say, his technical skills were obviously there, but, you know, it was like he was leading girls by the nose, and suddenly the last few seconds, he threw this overhand right that was so compact, quick, and clever that actually it was just like one of those ones. But that was half a second. He threw another one over the top a bit harder, and then 2 or 3 hooks either side, and it was like there was so much intensity and spite in those shots. That was the fucking last thing you expected coming from, you know, this apparently very much so humble, modest guy. And, you know, was he as much of, you know, the story of the fight? If you want to look at it, you know, Groves had really was a much more storied career and much more experienced, you know what I mean? And it was a nice pitch of skills as well. Didn't watch any of these fights to the end, by the way, because I don't have a lifetime to do that, you know. You know, I just seem playing the old guitar the old time and stuff like that, so kind of have to do that there too, you know what I mean? But I do like the old boxing, and I do like it when, you know, regardless of British, Irish, or whatever, you know, when the guys from our side of the water make a good showing, and make a little example sometimes, and maybe not everybody picks up on it, you know, but it's nice to be privy to stuff like that. And yeah, I was going to go into a whole other thing about John Lennon and the Beatles and some spurious connection, you know. And it's a great word, spurious, isn't it? But yeah, I mentioned this quickly. Apparently, John Lennon, like when they were in school and on about doing the Teddy Boys thing and becoming rockers and doing whatever else, Uh, you can imagine being a pretty skinny guy, but apparently you like to fight. John Lennon, you like to get stuck in from time to time. Like, didn't always win, like, didn't always win, but you know, um, just as well, he had a bit of a knack for music. Anyway, guys, that's my Liverpool sign off, right? Good night.